Have you ever tried swimming through dirt? I have, and I'm not great at it. Yet. That's because, unlike liquids and gases, which only provide resistance, things like rocks, mud, and sand are solid examples of mediums that can completely negate our ability to move. But despite this, many beasts, both real and fictional, are at home when down under, with tropes culminating around the idea that some animals can dig to the point that it seems like they swim through the ground. Popular examples like the sandworm and land shark are the poster children and trope names for this type of design, but I've taken to generalize them as earth swimmers. And the traversal as we see it is not just clipping through the map and appearing elsewhere. Displacing material costs energy, requiring changes to lower that cost. However, not all creatures are the same. Both moles and worms dig in soil, but don't use the same tools, or limbs for that matter. And even those with the tools are not fully adapted to life underneath. So instead of focusing on every animal that can dig, I'll specifically cover fossorial animals. From the Latin word fossor, meaning digger, these animals are adapted to digging and living primarily, but not solely, underground. Unlike subterranean animals, which rarely ever surface, if at all. I'll tackle their general shape, limitations, substrate-specific tools, reasons for burrowing, and why these creatures and their behaviors are so important. As usual, here are the timestamps if you want to skip, but before any specifics, let's discuss the general shape most underground creatures follow. From moles to snakes, burrowing animals have streamlined cylindrical bodies tapering at both ends. This body plan, called a fusiform, Latin for spindle-shaped, helps reduce friction and prevents getting stuck in tunnels, further complemented by minimized or absent external ears, tails, and shorter limbs. And though these limbs seem inefficient, they are exceptionally powerful. The shorter muscles provide better leverage and are equipped with wide paws and long claws. Mammals rely on these biological shovels to move as much material as possible in the fewest movements. Fossorial animals are also very compact and flat. The vertebrae in their lumbar section, or lower back, are fused and much shorter than those of non-fossorial mammals. This reduces flexibility but greatly increases strength and stability. And though not a mammal, the broadened ribs of the Unatosaurus africanus helped it dig to escape harsh sunlight, and is the ancestor of all modern turtles. Their unique shells are a result of this burrowing behavior. Some animals like aardvarks don't follow all these adaptations, but more specialized animals like moles, echidnas, badgers, and pink fairy armadillos do. Echidnas even take it one step further, evolving backwards-facing hind feet to assist in pushing substrate out of the way. On the reptilian side, instead of compacting themselves and using their forelimbs, they elongate their bodies, keep their tails, and reduce or lose limbs entirely. They either use their heads like shovels to loosen and pack substrate, such as the Florida worm lizard, rely on concertina locomotion like caecilians, anchoring a part of their body, then pushing through the soil like earthworms, or more commonly use lateral undulation, moving side to side in a wave-like pattern to propel themselves forward underground, like the western three-toed skink, giving us our first instance of earth swimming. This burrowing method is why snakes lost their limbs in the first place. Ancient burrowing lizards gradually lost their limbs as they swam through the earth, followed by their hind limbs, which are usually kept for mating, and only keeping all limbs if they still spend time on the surface, like the sandfish. The balahara in Monster Hunter undulates in a spinning motion, assisted by its spiral pattern scales displacing substrate and helping it move like a biological drill. But these aren't set differences. Though rare, you can have burrowing mammals that are long or don't rely on their forelimbs. You can also have compact burrowing reptiles and those that depend entirely on their forelimbs. Invertebrates are a different can of worms that I won't cover. These animals are incredibly skilled in navigating their underground homes, but each strength requires subsequent trade-offs resulting from an environment, and the underground has many limitations. To start, the biggest limitation is the ground itself. These solid mediums are incredibly hard to move in like you would with water, and the deeper you go, the stronger the pressure and tougher the substrate. This makes true earth swimming unachievable, but we can treat this as more of a suggestion than a law. An obvious limitation is the lack of light. Due to this, many fossorial animals have poor eyesight, but it varies, since, as I've mentioned before, fossorial animals live primarily but not solely underground, so note when and where your creatures surface. Diurnal prairie dogs and meerkats have excellent vision to spot predators in their open habitats. Nocturnal badgers and wombats have eyesight, though nowhere near as good as the latter, just enough to see shapes and movement. Finally, animals that rarely surface, like the blind snake and golden mole, have scale-covered eyes that can only sense light, and skin-covered eyes making them completely blind, respectively. Many compensate for the lack of sight by detecting chemicals through smell or taste, like gophers and snakes, using sensitive body parts like whiskers, skin, or flesh tendrils to feel their surroundings, or the most common adaptation in media, vibration detection. Whether they produce sound or not, many fossorial animals are sensitive to vibrations since solids carry them much better than liquids and gases. Do remember that low-frequency vibrations and sounds around or below 300 Hz travel the best in solids. Compared to higher-frequency sounds, their slower rate of oscillation allows them to travel farther and faster on the ground. These low sounds are often felt, not heard, and are commonly linked to settling tectonic plates and the movement of friend, foe, or food above and below. These vibrations are felt almost always due to specialized ear structures. While this varies across animal groups, most fossorial mammals typically have reduced or missing middle ear muscles, and a larger stapes footplate, the part of the middle ear that connects to the inner ear. These changes decrease their sensitivity to airborne sound. However, in some species like the golden mole, the enlargement of these ear bones may improve their ability to detect vibrations. Another detection method is through touch. Almost every member in the animal family Talpidae, which includes moles, shrew moles, and desmans, have one distinct feature: Eimer's organ. First described by Theodore Eimer in 1871, this sensory structure is found only in the skin of mole noses and is incredibly sensitive to touch. These tiny disc-shaped bumps contain multiple sensory receptors and nerve endings to effectively see vibrations. The star-nosed mole is the best example for this, having 25,000 of these discs distributed over the 22 growths on its nose, and over 100,000 nerves connected to the star. Its brain has visible regions dedicated for each pair of feelers, giving it a much clearer environmental image compared to its non-star-nosed cousins. Despite their non-fossorial nature, elephants are sensitive to vibrations they use to communicate with other herds, emitting low-frequency rumbles that travel through the ground and are sensed by receptors in their feet. These receptors are so sensitive, they can even detect approaching storms. The Shara ishvalda from Monster Hunter has a crown of petals that are used similarly to the star of a star-nosed mole. Going off of the part named tenderplate, we can assume that these petals are fleshy in nature and contain multiple nerves along with Monster Hunter's equivalent of an Eimer's organ. Fish and amphibians also have this sensitivity to vibrations, possessing what's called a lateral line, a distributed sensory system of neuromasts extending down the sides of the animal. These can detect and locate any water disturbances, and determine whether they're stationary, moving, dead, or alive. Another obvious but less acknowledged limit is the amount of oxygen underground. These habitats can easily be hypoxic, run low, or anoxic, completely deprived of oxygen. To avoid this, most fossorial animals have lower metabolisms, slowing down bodily processes like breathing, heart rate, and digestion, thus reducing oxygen needs and carbon dioxide production. Their blood also contains more hemoglobin than surface animals, helping carry more oxygen around the body. A short-term fix for low oxygen is anaerobic respiration, producing energy without oxygen. Most mammals break down glucose for energy, requiring oxygen, switching to lactic acid in low oxygen conditions. But this results in minimal energy and muscle fatigue due to lactic acid buildup. Naked mole rats use fructose, which doesn't require oxygen to break down and avoids acidic buildup. Compared to most mammals, where fructose's primary use is in the liver, they also function in the brain and heart of the mole rat, granting better survivability. Many animals also take advantage of tiny air pockets trapped between substrate particles. Excluding the biological changes mentioned, burrows can also be built to maximize airflow. Ants, termites, ground squirrels, and many others have well-ventilated tunnel systems that, like a proper PC build, have well-placed intake and exhaust vents regulating the airflow. These tunnel systems would also likely avoid plant roots, since plant roots are constantly absorbing oxygen, making areas with plant roots much more anoxic. On the opposite side of the low oxygen coin are high levels of carbon dioxide, which, in addition to hypoxia, results in respiratory acidosis, where the lungs fail to remove sufficient carbon dioxide, making the blood acidic due to hypercapnia, or elevated carbon dioxide levels in the blood. Every method mentioned earlier helps remedy this issue, but as an additional adaptation, mammals increase bicarbonate levels to restore a normal pH, something mole rats do to an unprecedented degree. Another issue is particles interfering functions like breathing or movement. I'll tackle movement hindrances later, but for now, let's focus on breathing. Sandfish skinks have valved nostrils to prevent large sand particle inhalation, and nasal passages filtering the remaining small ones. Any sand left is expelled by sneezing. Naked mole rats have hair-lined nasal passages to filter out dirt. Moles have small nostrils that can close when digging, and amphisbaenas have nostrils angled downward to reduce soil intake. This drawback is especially prevalent in fictional examples where most earth swimmers travel with their mouths open. Some monster hunter sand swimmers like the cephadrome, nibblesnarf, and balahara have gills that expel sand as they swim through the dunes, while others simply consume the substrate and expel it afterwards. One limit you may or may not have noticed is size. The largest extant burrowing animal is the polar bear, which can grow up to 5 feet at the shoulder and 8 to 10 feet long. However, they only dig for cub rearing, thus are not fossorial. The largest fossorial animal is the aardvark, which only grows up to 2 feet shoulder height and 4 feet long, a far cry from burrowing behemoths like graboids and dune worms. A big reason for this is the lack of oxygen as mentioned earlier. Larger animals exhaust available oxygen quicker, replacing it with deadly carbon dioxide. Their size also affects energy consumption, as larger animals require larger meals and tunnels, thus more energy. Large tunnels also need stronger reinforcements, while smaller tunnels easily compact as the creature makes it. Though this structural integrity depends on the substrate, requiring different specializations to navigate. Firstly, what is a substrate? In biology, a substrate is the surface or material on or from which an organism lives, grows, or obtains its nourishment. For our purposes, it will refer to our creature's burrowing medium. Substrates can come in many forms, composed of minerals like quartz and pumice, or organic material like decaying plants. But our main focus will be on mineral substrates, which I will tackle by particle size. And with that out of the way, let's start off with mud. This substrate is typically composed of silt and clay. Silt measures around 0.002 to 0.05 millimeters, with clay going below that. These fine sizes grant superior adhesion, allowing mud to hold water very well. Clay is much better than silt at being molded and retaining its shape without any damage. It also makes mud much softer and due to its size is much better than silt at retaining water. This affects the mud depending on each mineral's ratio and water content. When too dry, clay-dominant mud hardens to the point of inconvenience, while silty mud collapses easier. Too wet and the walls become unstable, risking collapse regardless of substrate ratio. To assist in burrow stability, animals like beavers use sticks to reinforce their tunnels. Mud is incredibly sticky because of the clay, hindering movement no matter the amount of water. To remedy this, animals employ multiple methods to reduce the substrate bogging them down. Firstly, some form of hydrophobic coating to prevent mud buildup. Mud skippers constantly excrete a mucus layer that, while not hydrophobic, acts as a lubricant, allowing them to glide through mud and preventing it from sticking onto them, occasionally shedding this coating to keep themselves clean and bacteria-free. Mammals like beavers excrete oil that reduces mud buildup, but has to be further maintained through grooming. Aiding this coating, their bodies have armor, their primary layer of protection. Mudskippers, many amphibians, and fish have smooth scales or skin, decreasing friction and easily removing mud that sticks onto them. This skin may also allow your organism to breathe through cutaneous respiration, helping them avoid low oxygen conditions mentioned earlier. Mammals like beavers have dense air-trapping underfur and strong waterproof guard hairs that prevent mud from seeping in deeper. Mud also hosts a multitude of bacteria, both beneficial and detrimental, so make sure your creatures have strong immune systems, especially if they ingest this substrate. But in some cases, mud, or more specifically, the clay in it, can be beneficial in fighting against infections. Oregon blue clay, once rehydrated, releases harmful metal that kills off bacteria with chemical toxicity. Now, to effectively swim in mud, that hydrophobic coating from earlier can assist in making mud act more like water, though this would depend on the substrate's water levels and mineral ratio, with higher water levels being more preferable to take advantage of its softness. Almudron from Monster Hunter releases a golden fluid from its tail that immediately turns solid ground into a marshy trap, allowing it to swim in almost any mud variant because of this substance. Going from the extremely wet to the extremely dry, we have sand, the substrate poster child for earth swimming. Its composition is all over the place, literally. It depends entirely on location. Beaches and reefs have sand composed of calcium carbonate from shells and corals. Other beaches, deserts, and rivers are quartz, while volcanic regions like Hawaii and Iceland have black sand made of basalt. Despite this diversity, they all follow the same behavior due to their mineral nature and size. The basic range for sand particles is 0.06 to 2 millimeters, much larger than the previous substrate, making them a lot looser and less viable for holding water the larger they get. This looseness is why it's the best substrate to swim in. Compared to smaller grains of salt, large sand particles don't pack together tightly, leaving wide spaces between them. Because of this, it favors sharp pick-like claws rather than shovel-like appendages. Comparing the golden mole to its garden variety cousin, we can clearly see that the ratio of claw to paw is much higher, though I do think it has to do with its specialization in loose sand, as creatures like the Diablos in Monster Hunter dig much deeper, thus possessing flat, wide claws more similar to excavators. Animals may take advantage of this looseness through fluidization. When force from underneath pushes against sand with equal power to its weight, the particles hover in equilibrium and act like water, usually done with mediums like liquids and gases. This makes it easier to move around in, but is restricted to small manageable areas. The sandfish skink's mammal-like arm movement and precise undulation speed causes sand to be fluidized only for a few seconds, though it significantly decreases energetic costs. A creature of my own design, the balutofan, move in a diamond formation across the desert's surface, creating a fluidized enclosure by using an intricate system of pores and air sacs that steadily release carbon dioxide. An imperfect but functional design. This looseness also makes it less viable for most creatures to create and maintain structures. While some, like crabs, can, it's because moist beach sand actually keeps its shape, perfect for crabs to sift through and set up shop. The many sand swimmers of Monster Hunter are constantly on the move and merely use the sand for travel and hiding places to cool off or hunt, while rocky caverns are more permanent residences that offer better refuge compared to the rough sand. Reptiles like the sandfish skink circumvent this with smooth scales negating friction damage and sand buildup, reducing friction when burrowing, while mammals like golden moles have thick skin to protect against abrasion and a secondary defense of short but dense velvety fur to prevent trapping sand. To further aid in swimming, similar to mudskippers, your creature can make use of lubricants. In this case, dry or solid lubricants. These materials, despite their solid nature, can reduce the friction between two surfaces sliding against each other without using a liquid oil medium. They also work well in high temperature conditions compared to liquid lubricants. They can be divided into two categories, hard and soft lubricants. Hard lubricants like diamonds negate friction through their extreme chemical inertness, their ability to resist chemical changes. This grants them superior wear resistance compared to the next category. Soft lubricants like graphite and molybdenum disulfide get their friction-negating nature from their layered crystal structure. Each layer is weakly bonded, allowing them to slide easily over each other. But both lubricants can be utilized by your creatures as self-produced powder coatings, protective film layers, or integrated directly into their skin to reduce friction. Next up, soil, which by itself is not a unique substrate, but instead a mixture of the previous ones. Though dirt and soil are often used interchangeably, they aren't exactly the same. Soil is composed of sand, silt, and clay particles, with an ecosystem of organic matter, water, air, and microorganisms. Dirt contains the same minerals, but lacks that essential ecosystem. This makes soil much tastier than dirt and much more preferable as a habitat. And though soil can also technically become mud or be part of it, I've separated them from silt and clay as we see them separately in media. Soil's mineral mixture offers variety depending on substrate ratio and water levels, though the general criteria remains the same. It should be loose enough to dig easily and contain minimal obstacles such as roots and rocks. There are 4 main soil types depending on composition ratio: sandy, loamy, silty, and clayey. Sandy soil is mostly sand, loose and easy to dig through, but collapses easily when dry. Great for shallow surface level burrows, just not deep stable tunnels. Loamy soil is the best type. It has an equal mix of substrates, perfect for holding its shape while being easy to dig through, retaining moisture well and supports plant life. Silty soil is soft and fine-grained, making it easy to dig through but just as easy to collapse. Clay-rich soil is tough when dry but holds up well when damp. The universal tools of paws and claws still carry over to this medium, though not always. Naked mole rats chew through dirt using their incisors to create tunnels, compared to moles and other similar fossorial animals. Similar to sand, soil can act like a liquid under the right circumstances. In this case, soil liquefaction. This happens when saturated soil, meaning it contains the maximum amount of water it can possibly absorb, is subjected to sudden stress like an earthquake. The vibrations from the tremors cause water to fill the gaps between the soil particles, making it act like a liquid. This is most common with loose sandy soil. Ignoring the size limitation from earlier, extremely large creatures like the Shehulud can generate vibrations powerful enough to liquefy a substrate simply due to their size. Monster Hunter Shara Ishvalda achieves the same result by vibrating its wingtips in hardened sand to instantly liquefy it, allowing them to easily sink underground. As usual, reptile smooth scales make any substrate slide right off, while mammals have modified fur. Common garden moles have velvety hair that can turn in any direction, preventing substrate trapping and offers comfortable underground movement. Badgers have rough, stiff, wiry hairs that block particles from entering completely. Naked mole rats ultimately lack hair, instead opting for loose, stretchy skin to help avoid trapping themselves between sharp rocks and easily slip through narrow passageways. Now for a tougher material, rocks. Geologically speaking, rocks are a solid mass or aggregate of minerals, disqualifying the previous substrates. As though they are minerals, they are separate individual particles. Any mixture 2 millimeters or larger is technically considered gravel, changing titles once larger sizes are reached, evolving from gravel to cobble to boulders, though technically still rocks. Their mineral composition dictates their toughness, but is irrelevant in this context since there's too many combinations to discuss. Because of this toughness, this limits us to only a few creatures, and is where invertebrates take first place despite their speed. Animals like the piddock clam and rock-boring urchins take the scenic route. Carving away at rocks they perch on with rough shells or teeth to slowly bore a hole into the stone like a drill on its lowest setting, forming vast colonies and rocks along the shore and ocean floor. Piddock clams also release acid from their feet to aid in tunneling. Other creatures that do this include the boring giant clam and ossidax, the abyssal bone-eating worms, which, in addition to sounding like a Dark Souls boss, exclusively utilizes acid to burrow in fallen whale skeletons. I can't think of any media utilizing acid as prominently as they do, and I was really hoping the Slitherfang from Forbidden West uses acid to assist in digging, but like most combat-based machines, it's just a defense mechanism. Compared to acid though, the wearing down of stone at higher speeds is more common. The Drillbur line from Pokemon spin at extreme speeds to penetrate and instantly obliterate solid rock. Much larger beasts, bots, like the Rockbreaker from Horizon, take what the Balahara has and pushes it further, not needing to undulate and instead pushing through stone with ease using its sheer size, tricone drill maw, and powerful mole-like body. Despite these examples of rock drilling, there is a preference. While piddocks occasionally bore into gneiss, an incredibly tough rock, similar to the other real-life rock borers we have, they prefer soft rocks, except for the ossidax, which exclusively drills through bone. Limestone, sandstone, chalk, corals, all sedimentary rocks much easier to chip away compared to their igneous and metamorphic counterparts. Now for two substrates that aren't usually seen as minerals, snow and ice. Go watch this video, it'll make more sense. Starting with snow, though not the same as our previous substrates, is very common burrowing grounds for many creatures. Rodents such as lemmings and mice use deep snow as cover to escape predators. And that is its biggest caveat. Ignoring cold damage, snow deep enough to burrow in isn't guaranteed in areas farther from the poles, assuming your world has the same climate as our own and that your creatures are larger than a car. Interference like strong winds, creature movement, etc. also decrease the chances of proper snow buildup. Disregarding these conditions, being large is actually enough to swim in the substrate. Moose and bison often make paths in deep snow using their size to plow through this ivory roadblock, burning quickly through energy reserves but achieves our goal with pure strength alone. The Beotodus in Monster Hunter uses its crescent horn to push snow as it swims through it, even going as far as to diving in certain areas. Instead of relying on strength, body heat would also make this process a lot smoother, though not always achievable as cold-adapted bodies are meant to keep heat in, thus the buildup of snow on most animals not melting despite their movement. A step up from snow is ice. Though we don't have any animals that exactly dig into ice, we do have those that require breaking through it to live. Various seal species chew through ice to create air holes they can surface to from under the ice sheet, relying on strong jaws and sharp incisors to make a small but sufficient opening. Large creatures like the Eucanos and Monster Hunter use their sheer size to crash through the ice like an icebreaker ship. Others like the Subnautica iceworm use heat along with size to speed up the process and ensure the creation of long-lasting tunnels they can travel through instead of relying solely on their ice-swimming ability. A positive from using ice is that when heated slightly with body heat, it melts into a thin water layer that in low-temperature conditions freezes quickly, improving the tunnel's strength. Now why would they do this? Why go through all the trouble of making space below when there's already so much space up top? There are many reasons. To protect themselves from predators and environmental conditions, to safely raise young, to store food, or even to hibernate. But in media, this skill is more often than not used for hunting, to introduce an environment where characters are out of their element. Similar to when we explore the open ocean, these beasts are leagues ahead of traversal in this medium, and great threats for story and world-building purposes. Which brings me to say that it's much better to see our creatures' use of these environments less like they're on solid ground and more like they're in water. The vast dunes in Monster Hunter are much more alike to our seas than our deserts, with most of the fauna inhabiting what we can't see below. This perspective opens up a wider range for our creature designs, but not to the point that we should forget what burrowing is used for and what it's like in real life. As I've mentioned before, true earth swimming isn't possible, so there is no reason for your design to follow real-life rules. But it can help. The design would feel more realistic and unique in your creature roster. And just as they affect our perception of them, they also affect the world they live in. The many habits of a fossorial animal affect their habitats. These beasts are ecosystem engineers, organisms that shape our ecosystems directly or otherwise. Most burrowers have an important role in bioturbation, the disturbance of sedimentary deposits by living organisms, providing valuable services like shelter for other animals, mixing substrates and organic matter, helping circulate nutrients, and improving water and air infiltration into soil, reducing erosion by absorbing water instead of allowing it to run off. Some, like moles, are also incredible pest control for harmful plant-destroying invertebrates. Games like Monster Hunter have a great example with the Diablos, shifting the environment as they search for cacti to eat or intruders to deter. Their tunnels encompass a large part of the map, offering a path for water from the marshes to flow through and serving as homes for other monsters like Glavenus and Rathian. Fictional or not, any organism that affects the environment, especially ones that can change the terrain itself, are vital to the habitat's health. Taking them out would change it unpredictably. So to design a creature that is so integrated into its domain would mean a multitude of ways it can affect it. The desert ecosystem of Arrakis revolves around the Shai-Hulud, fully grown and newly born. Their mere existence influences not just the terrain, but the culture and life of the planet's inhabitants, being worshipped like gods and revered for their power. I'd like to end this video by apologizing for the long wait. I've seen the comments asking where I am and kinda got scared. I've been busy with real-life stuff. Firstly, I'm embarrassed to admit that I got sidetracked, mainly because of MH Wild's release. Also, for each research paper I read, there was so much more info that I wanted to add in, but the video was long enough and complicated as it is. Also, I couldn't really discuss earth swimming without explaining burrowing first, so both topics just ended up making one huge video, and I kept going through so many rewrites of this script. Despite all that happened, I'm glad I managed to put this one out, and I hope it helps. I'd like to thank everyone's patience and continued support of this channel, so please like, share, and subscribe to help this video get through the algorithm. I'm gonna need it now more than ever. And if I made any mistakes, or you want to add anything I might have missed, do not hesitate to tell me in the comments below. As a side note, I'll be posting a short announcement soon after this video, but with that said, best of luck out there, and enjoy the bloopers on your way out. I'm not even editing yet, and I already have a blooper reel. This is insane. And the traversal is not oh my. These animals are adapted to digging and living primarily. These animals are adapted to digging primarily. Oh no. These animals are digging. Altacker are fused and much shorter than those. What the fuck? Than those of non-fossorial animals. Non-fossorial mammals. Fuck. Than those of non-fossorial. Come on, man. They elongate their butt. Why? Or more commonly use lateral. Shut up. You can also have compact to spot predators. Bit my tongue. Whether they produce. Fudge. Since. The territorial Shai-Hulud. I need to know how to pronounce that. Going much faster and farther to reduce energy use, thus reducing energy need. Of course, well, duh. On the opposite side, larger animals exhaust hi. Should I have put larger energy? Nah, that's kind of stupid. A substrate is the surface. What is wrong? I was doing just fine practicing. What is it with recording? In biology, a substrate. What? Composed of minerals like quartz and pumice? Which one's the right one? But pumice pronunciation.
Pumice.
Composed of minerals like quartz and pumice, mud is incredibly occasionally shedding this coating to keep themselves clean and bacteria-free. Shut up, bird! Mammals like water voles The skin may also allow your organism to breathe through cutaneous... Oh my gosh, I don't know how to say it. Much larger than the Bird, shut up! I actually don't know where I'm at right now with the script. I kept pausing so many times. Okay, let's just, you know what? Let's just go through all of this again. The particles hover in equal. Bird, please. Oh wait, I think I went through this already. Oh gods. Soil's mineral interference like strong wind. Free run crash through the ice like an icebreaker to protect themselves from predators and they search for cacti or intruders to eat or deter. What? No.